And welcome back to part 5 and the final part of our series on your fad diets, a genuine pro and con approach. What better way to end than with all the fervor around the Game Changers documentary to talk vegan, vegetarian, and plant-based dieting. I know your question is, Squat Dad, what are you wearing? This video should be going live somewhere around Christmas. So I pulled out the Christmas jammies, and to be honest, it's pretty freezing in my house right now, so just go with it. It's gonna make a great thumbnail, and if you're not clickbaiting, you're not trying. All right, so today we're talking vegan and plant-based dieting. Let's get some definitions out of the way before we start anything else. All right, so vegan diet here, by definition, what is it? So vegan, when we're talking about vegan, not vegetarian, not plant-based, not flexitarian, we'll talk about those, but the vegan diet is the strictest form of the vegetarian diet. It's a diet that is void of any and all animal products, things like meat, fish, eggs, cheese, dairy products, and then even some stuff that you don't really think about, like honey. Like anything that comes from an animal, completely cut it out. So if it wasn't made, or if it came from an animal, made by an animal, it is an animal, it used to be an animal, you're wearing animal, not allowed in the vegan diet. Now let's talk about some less strict forms, because a lot of individuals who claim that they are vegan are uninformed and they say that they're vegan. They're actually some form of one of these vegetarian lifestyles. Excuse me. So the first one up is a lacto-vegetarian. Lacto, you think milk, so it is a vegan diet that includes milk and milk products. So you can have dairy, so excludes meat, fish, poultry, eggs, but you can have your dairy products, so your yogurts, your cheeses. I'm a big Greek yogurt and cottage cheese guy, so a lacto-vegetarian lifestyle might be one that I could actually get into. Ovo-vegetarian, ovo, eggs. It's a diet that excludes all meat, fish, again, meat, fish, poultry, dairy this time, so dairy's out, and now we bring in eggs. And now there is a combination of those two that's called the lacto-ovo vegetarian, where you can have both dairy and eggs. So again, a lot of iterations here. Pescatarian, this is one that's very, very popular. You exclude all meat products except for fish. Your strict vegan, which we just talked about, and then there's the flexitarian. The flexitarian is a more flexible approach. It's more focused around having a plant-based diet that either uses smaller portions of meat or has less frequency of meat consumption within the diet. So maybe you only eat meat twice a week or 3 times a week, or you make it a point to only consume meat with one of your meals throughout the day or 2 of your meals throughout the day, or you're usually a 6 ounces of meat with every single meal kind of person, and you bring it down to 2 ounces or 3 ounces. That's more of the flexitarian approach. A lot of different ways to approach that. Now, over on the right side of your screen here, we've got some definitions here of some other stuff: semi-vegetarian, pesco-vegetarian, some of the ones that we talked about, the macrobiotic, the fruitarian, only fruits. So you can pause the video right here and read through those if you'd like. Again, just like our previous videos, we're going to be focusing on the use of the vegan, vegetarian, and plant-based dieting for overall health. So we're mainly going to look at early mortality, early death, all risk mortality, things like that, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, as well as body composition. So first we go into a day of eating for a vegetarian. So I didn't really throw together a meal plan on this one. What I did was, these are the general recommendations of what you should be consuming daily as a vegetarian. So vegetables, 2.5 cups a day at least. Shouldn't have any issue hitting that. Fruits, 2 cups a day at least. Your grains, again, you want to reach for the whole grains instead of the refined. If you're allowed to have dairy, so if you are lacto-vegetarian, ovo-lacto-vegetarian, or a flexitarian, shoot for somewhere around 3 cups a day. Your protein and protein-containing foods, these can be soy-based protein foods, things like tempeh, all sorts of the stuff that you see in the vegan section of grocery stores like Whole Foods, Sprouts, food products that are popping up all over the place that are vegan-friendly, somewhere around 3.5 ounces a day. And then your oils, stick to around an ounce a day of those, somewhere around 2 tablespoons, 28 grams. Over on the right side of your screen, I included another graphic here, and it's about the common micronutrient concerns and macronutrient concerns with the vegetarian diet. So your most common deficiencies: calcium, vitamin D, iron, zinc, B12, omega-3 fatty acids, and proteins. So what this does is it goes into what's the possible pathology, what can happen as a result of being deficient in these, how can you supplement with those? So where can I find that? And then what type of diet makes you most likely to suffer from those deficiencies? So if we look at something like calcium and vitamin D, the vegan and ovo-vegetarian will run the highest risk, because someone like a flexitarian or a lacto-vegetarian will be able to get calcium and vitamin D from the dairy product. So some of these nutrient deficiencies are actually specific to certain families of the vegan diet. So it's important to know those. And if you are going to go the route of pursuing a vegetarian or a vegan lifestyle, know where the little holes and the little gaps are going to be in your diet, and then kind of fill those in appropriately with either nutritional supplementation, or stop off at the local GNC and pick up some of that as well. Moving right along, so I wanted to start off this one with the JISS's position statement on vegan diets. Very long. It's going to be linked in the references. I encourage you, if you either want to debunk some of your extremist vegetarian friends or you just want to read this for your own knowledge, the link is in the references. As always, just DM me for the references and I'll send those over. But I threw together some general takeaways and some general points and some responses to common concerns with the vegan and the vegetarian diet. So calories. Calories are number one here that we want to look at. Really, when we look at any diet, what's the status of energy balance? And when you take someone from an average American diet that's high in fat, high in refined carbohydrates, usually a diet over consumption, and you move them over to a plant-based lifestyle or a plant-based diet where they're eating mostly fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and things like that, what happens to their calories, and you can kind of guess this, I'll let you guess, what happens to their calories? It drops off. They're eating these very high volume, high nutrient foods that are also lower in calories. So sometimes we see this steep drop off in calories and people say, I feel like crap when I start the vegan diet. It's just because they're under consuming calories and they need to monitor that. So the data does support this. It suggests that vegetarians consume fewer calories than their omnivorous counterparts. So if you are looking for weight loss, this might be a great way to go. So swap out a McDonald's cheeseburger for some lentils. That's a great way to reduce the calories and lose some weight. However, it's not going to be ideal for athletes. You see athletes, a great example of this is someone like Cam Newton. Cam Newton last offseason switched over to a vegetarian or a vegan diet. I forget what it was. Lost a bunch of weight. They were talking about how he gained a bunch of strength, how he was faster, how he was lighter than ever. Early on in this season, he gets an injury he's unable to recover from, and he's been on the injured reserve all the way through. Does that have to do with his vegetarian lifestyle? It's impossible to say, but it could have something to do with the fact that he's not getting in enough energy to actually recover from his injuries. So how do I rectify the issue? You can do one of two things. You can increase your feeding frequency. So maybe you go from eating 2 meals a day to 4 meals a day. If the meals are the same size, that should bump calorie intake up. Or you reach for some vegan or vegetarian friendly nutrient and energy dense foods, seeds, nuts. I mean, who doesn't love a nice jar of peanut butter? That's a great way to get your calories up. So that's how you're going to rectify that issue. Now, the next one up is another one that people point to right away. People usually don't even look at calories right away. They look at protein right away. They say vegetarian diet is inferior to an omnivorous diet because the protein intake is going to be lower. And that's going to be somewhat true, somewhat not true. There's a little bit of nuance there. It's not so much that the protein intake may go down. It will go down, but not tremendously. It's that the quality of the protein from those plant sources is going to be lower. You're going to have a lower or an inferior amino acid profile in those plant-based proteins, and you need to have the knowledge of how to mix stuff up. So you have to use, if you look at two bullet points down, you have to emphasize complementary proteins. So complementary proteins take one protein source with another protein source, both incomplete on their own, put them together, and all of a sudden they've got all 20 of the amino acids that you need, so they become a complete protein. A good example of this is rice and beans. And if you look at vegan protein powders, they're most often a combination of pea and rice protein, because when you take pea and rice protein together and you isolate it, you get a really big dose of complete protein there. All of the amino acids that you need for muscle protein synthesis. So supplementing with those plant-based protein powders, so the pea is solid, rice is solid, the combination of those two. A lot of soy isolates out there. We can get into some of the issues with soy and breast cancer risk. We won't cover any of that today. And then spirulina. Spirulina is another one that I saw a lot of people supplementing with probably 5-6 years ago. And then when everyone realized it tasted like chewing on lawn clippings, they went over to the pea and the rice. They were like, wait, I can get a complete protein over here and it doesn't taste like chewing on my lawn? Oh, that sounds good to me. So there's a lot more pea and rice now. However, the ISSN does still recommend that you increase your total daily protein consumption. So for omnivores, they recommend anywhere from like 1.2 to 1.8 grams per kilogram. For plant-based individuals or vegans or vegetarians, what they suggest is you bring that number up to 1.4 to 2.0 grams per kilogram. However, you can take those numbers even higher. So they looked at some studies that examined 1.8 to 2.7 grams per kilogram and noticed that there was additional benefit for those looking for muscle gain or muscle retention during a weight loss period or a hypocaloric period. Carbohydrates in the vegan diet are pretty straightforward. When you're eating mainly whole grains, fruits, and vegetables, you're probably not going to suffer in terms of getting in enough carbohydrate. You do want to be wary of some of these vegan protein products, so certain tofus, certain plant burgers, the Impossible Burger that's so popular now, are actually very, very high in carbohydrate and very high in calories as well. So you think you're just getting a post-workout protein supplement, but it's actually got more carbohydrate than it has protein in it, and then that jacks your calorie intake up for the day and kind of sets you back in terms of getting towards your weight loss goals. So be careful with these vegan protein products. They're marketed to you as vegan, but as we saw with the complete cookie fiasco, the calories are just so high that it doesn't justify the protein that you're getting from it. You need to balance out carbohydrate needs with energy needs. So if you're someone who's a vegan marathon runner, yeah, go gangbusters. Plenty of carbohydrate. But if you are a vegan who is getting ready for a bodybuilding competition, then you really need to be wary of what you choose, and you need to watch your carbohydrate intake because it can get elevated very, very quickly. One final point on carbohydrates that I want to make is that you want to watch your fiber when you first start a diet like this. The average American diet, and I'm just throwing out a random number here, probably has anywhere from 5 to 15 grams of fiber in an entire day. I've seen food logs from incoming clients who had very little nutritional knowledge, where over the course of 3 or 4 days in their 72 or their 96-hour dietary recall, they were averaging 2 or 3 grams of fiber a day. And then you take someone like that and you switch them over to a vegetarian diet where it's mostly, again, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and they go from 3 grams of fiber a day to 40 grams of fiber a day, you can expect the booty blowout that is to follow, which is not comfortable. So you get this huge amount of bloating. It's not comfortable. So you want to watch the fiber. Increase the fiber slowly, let the body adapt to the diet, or you will have some very unpleasant side effects. So that's what they had to say about carbohydrate. Moving on to dietary fat. When we look at the dietary fat intake of a vegetarian diet, what we notice is that as soon as you remove animal product from the diet, as long as you're not hammering a bunch of like coconut oil, you will see a decrease in total and saturated fat. So lower average consumption of total and saturated fat than the omnivorous diet seems to be a net positive for health. Could be a potential mechanism by which vegetarian diets reduce incidence of cardiovascular disease. Initially, people thought, oh, it's the cholesterol in the animal product. You switch over, you take out the animal product, you remove the cholesterol. That lowers CVD risk, but the link between cholesterol and cardiovascular disease is not as strong as it is with saturated fat and cardiovascular disease. So there's a much stronger link when you remove saturated fat or lower saturated fat and increase poly and monounsaturated fats in the diet, that CVD risk goes down in a protein and calorie controlled environment. Now, because again, you're emphasizing so much plants are high in omega-6s, your omega-3s, not so much. So you do want to balance out and make sure you're getting omega-3s in there as well. So this is an argument for the pescatarian diet, where you include fatty fish in the diet to make sure you're getting plenty of those omega-3s to balance out the high concentration of omega-6 in the diet. The problem with going away from the pescatarian and trying to get plant-based omega-3s is that they're hard to find in the diet. You've got things like flaxseed oil, but flaxseed actually has a very low bioavailability when it comes to providing omega-3. I believe I heard it was Kamal Patel of Examine.com talking on a recent podcast with Jeff Nippard about actually the best source of plant-based omega-3 being algae oil, and how hard it is to actually source quality omega-3 algae oil. So a good argument here for the pescatarian diet when it comes to reaching your omega-3 goal for the day. Now, micronutrients. As a whole, the vegan diet is going to outperform the average American diet when we look at a micronutrient to micronutrient basis. But that's not to say that that makes the vegan diet significantly better. We should put the vegan diet up on a pedestal because of that. That just kind of highlights how many gaps there are in the average American diet, or just how shitty the average American diet actually is. Because when we look at the vegan diet compared to a healthy omnivorous diet, we actually start to see micronutrient deficiencies. So things like B12, zinc, heme iron, so the more bioavailable form of iron, calcium, iodine, vitamin D. These are all very, very real concerns for deficiency in the vegetarian diet. So one, you either need to supplement with these, or two, you need to find vegan and vegetarian friendly food options that provide these micronutrients in high dosages. Supplementation can be a remedy, but again, always recommend the whole food sources over supplementation. So when we look at supplements in a vegan diet, good idea to supplement with the micronutrients mentioned above. You can get your omega-3 via algae oil, which I already mentioned. Creatine monohydrate. So creatine monohydrate largely found in animal product, found in meat. So when we look at creatine concentration within the muscles of a vegetarian or a vegan, we always see that it's lower than an omnivore. So supplementing with creatine monohydrate at 0.1 grams per kilogram of body weight would be beneficial, especially for your vegan athletes. And then make sure you're getting an appropriate plant-based protein powder. So do your research, find out if the plant-based protein powder that you're using is actually using complementary proteins, so you're getting the full spectrum of amino acids needed for muscle protein synthesis. So I gave you a little slide right here in terms of filling in the vegan gaps. So where are the most common gaps? Protein, ALA, EPA, DHA, those are your essential fatty acids. B12, iron, zinc, calcium, iodine, vitamin D. So where are you going to find that stuff in the diet? I provided good dietary sources here of each of those. So again, if you want to take a second to pause here, take a screenshot of this, whatever it may be, send it to your vegan or vegetarian friends so that they know that this is actually how, or these are some good options when it comes to filling the gaps in their diet. All right, so enough background information. Let's actually get into my pros and cons. So full disclosure, I am a very, very big proponent of a plant-based diet. I did not say vegan. I did not say vegetarian. I said plant-based. I am a big fan, again, of Michael Pollan's 7 Rules. They're antiquated but kind of still relevant. My favorite one of those, you can see on the second bullet point here, kind of jumping ahead of myself, is that you should eat food, not too much, mostly plants. When we look at how do I build a healthful diet, it starts with being plant-based. It starts with a high consumption of vegetables, a high consumption of whole grains, of fruits, and then I throw in the stuff that makes me an omnivore, the lean meats. But again, not necessary to the diet to throw in those lean meats. So a vegan or vegetarian diet can be very health promoting. Can be, and we'll talk in the cons about how it can actually take away from health. But I think as a whole, the vegan diet and vegetarian diet can be a net positive to your health. So it is inherently health promoting. Fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, healthy fats. Throw those into anyone's diet, their health will likely improve. They will likely decrease ad libitum calorie intake. They'll lose weight. They'll get more micronutrients. And then if they start moving around more physically active, their health will for sure improve. And this is borne out in the data. And the vegans love to quote this data. They say, look at the data. Vegetarians and vegans outlive meat eaters. They outlive the carnivores. And yes, that is true. If we just look very broadly at the data, it does support that. However, I want to familiarize you guys with something called the healthy user bias. When we look at vegans and vegetarians, what do they do that's different than the average American carnivore? They live a significantly healthier lifestyle. They smoke at a lower rate. They drink alcohol at a lower rate. They spend more time outside in the sun at a higher rate. They don't have the same lifestyle risks. They're more physically active. So when we look at vegan versus omnivorous diets and we control for all those other factors, who wins? Not much difference. So again, I'm sure you guys are tired of hearing me say that. When we control for things for like physical activity, smoking, drinking, calories, protein, all of that, there's no real one diet that's going to outperform another. And the vegan diet is no exception to that. Talked about Pollan's rules. I encourage you guys to look those up. Some of them you'll laugh at because they're very outdated, but I do really like to eat food not too much and mostly plants. Your healthiest omnivores, so your omnivores that live the longest, consume a large amount of plant matter. They consume a lot of nuts, seeds, berries, leafy green vegetables, things like that. Another positive of the vegan diet is that you will get plenty of micronutrients. So if you look at the food options in the picture over on the right, you'll notice that there's a lot of different colors there signifying a lot of different micronutrients. The vegan diet has its downfalls in terms of some micronutrients, but as a whole is more micronutrient rich than the average American diet. Another benefit here is that when people start the vegan diet, they kind of do a mental reset. They say, all right, I'm going to focus on eating unprocessed, nutrient-dense, high-volume, whole foods. And holy shit, is that a recipe to feel fuller, eat more vitamins and minerals, and decrease your calorie intake, increase your energy throughout the day, and lose weight. It's just a good place to start. But it's not magic. And you hear people say all the time, I lost weight and I felt so good when I went on that smoothie cleanse. It's like, well, it wasn't the smoothie cleanse. That was just the first time you had a piece of fruit or vegetables in 6 years, you dumb asshole. Of course you actually felt better. Your body had been starved of vitamins since you were 18 years old, and now you feel a little bit better. It was the smoothie cleanse. It wasn't the vegetables. Whatever you say, Karen. I don't want to rant on that. Moving right along, some more pros here. So just like some of the other diets that I mentioned, there is a high degree of adaptability with the vegan diet. You've got a lot of foods available to you. especially with the different iterations of the plant-based eating lifestyle. So maybe for a couple months you're pescatarian, but you're like, man, I miss some of that low-fat dairy that I like, and then you kind of incorporate some dairy, and you find yourself living more of a flexitarian lifestyle. There's a lot of different routes and avenues that you can go down that leave you with this wide array of foods to choose from, so you're never really feeling super restricted. But again, can't say, all right, I'm going to eat a bunch of Oreos because they're vegan. Can't just fall for the marketing hype and just reach for the vegan stuff and say that you're going to be healthy. The focus still needs to be on the basics. Always go back to basics. Whole, unprocessed foods, lean meats, if you're flexitarian, or if that's allowed, fruits, vegetables, whole grains. Basis of your diet right there. Another big one here, and this is one that in terms of if you are in the mood to argue with someone, you're arguing with someone about the vegan diet, this is one where there's not much of a counter argument that you can make to this when people say, well, I'm a vegan or I'm a vegetarian because of an ethical or a moral argument, and they point you to documentaries like Food Inc. or those recent videos from the Fairlife farms of the animals being mistreated. There is absolutely no doubt that in this country, animal agriculture, cultivation of animal and meat product is a very unethical it's a very unethical process there. So if that is your reason, and if it is your way to kind of push back against that culture and say, listen, we're only going to eat meat product if there's a little bit more fair treatment, or maybe we push for these cell-cultured meat alternatives that are coming in the near future. That's a great argument right there, and there's no real argument against that because it is 100% valid. So if someone comes to you and they say, hey, I've got an ethical problem with the meat industry, or maybe my religion doesn't allow me to have that, that's where the buck stops right there. That's a solid argument. I'm not going to be the one to argue against you on that one. Another big positive here is the popularity of the vegan diet. Sometimes popularity can be a downfall of a diet. It can make it kind of annoying because you get these dogmatic followers. And yes, that's the case. But the popularity is also a good thing, because popularity and money being into something really promotes it. So you've got people putting out these cookbooks. There's lots of support groups. You wouldn't have to look hard on Facebook to find a vegan or a vegetarian support group to give you some recipes or kind of show you the ropes when you're first getting started. Friends, colleagues, people all around me are going vegan or going plant-based all the time. So it's interesting to see the popularity boost, and as the popularity goes up, the word gets out, and as a whole, I think that's a net positive to have people say, you know what, maybe I shouldn't eat so much processed meat, maybe I should emphasize a little bit more nuts, seeds, fruits, vegetables, that kind of thing. Definitely a positive right there. But it ain't all pros. There are definitely some cons. Bullet point number one was bullet point number one in presentation 1, 2, 3, and 4, so it's going to stay that way in number 5. Education is number 1. It's super important. And dogmatic people will be attracted to diets, nutrition, exercise, a lot like religion. You get these kind of culty mentality people. I mean, just again, I mentioned at the beginning, watch the Game Changers documentary, where they try and convince you that eating a burrito will ruin your ability to get a boner. Don't believe me? I'm dead serious. Go watch that documentary. So you still do need to be mindful of your food quality. You need to focus on quality. Don't demonize a single food product like animal products. Say, oh, meat products are the root of all evil, or the root of health concerns in the United States, because it's just not true. The root of all health concerns in the United States is overconsumption, and overconsumption of not one single food, but food in general. So be mindful of your calories, your protein, your fiber, your micronutrients, things like that, and you'll be successful regardless of the diet that you choose. It doesn't have to be a vegan or a vegetarian diet. There are still those potentials for micronutrient and macronutrient deficiencies, so you could run low on high quality proteins, which ruins your ability to retain or build muscle mass, which we know is good for health. Things like omega-3, B vitamins, iron, zinc, calcium, etc. So cover your bases, do your research. There's a lot of really, really good places where you can find information out there. Examine.com is a great place to start. So you can find, all right, where are the pitfalls of the vegan diet? What kind of vitamins or minerals will I be deficient on? And then how do I replace those in my diet? Creatine, another one. There will be lower creatine content in the diet, and creatine is one of those emerging supplements that it looks like it's much more than a supplement now. So its effect on muscle health, bone health, brain health, all that stuff, development in young kids, muscle mass retention with aging. Creatine is one of these super supplements that can be very, very low in a vegan or a vegetarian diet, so you definitely want to watch out for that. Popular diet, obviously going to get marketing buzzwords here. So plant-based, vegan, vegetarian. People start to use those words and equate those with healthy, the same way they did with organic or GMO free. So just because something says on the outside that it's vegan or it's vegetarian or it's plant-based, you look at something like the complete cookie. The complete cookie is vegan, it's GMO free, it's blah, 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 blah. It's also 400 calories. That could easily put you in a calorie surplus. That leads to body fat being deposited and your health declining. But it was vegan, but it was plant-based, but it was this, but it was that. Overconsumption will be deleterious to your health, regardless of the buzzwords that are being used. So don't buy the hype. And then we already mentioned this one a little bit, fiber, when we talked about carbohydrates. So be careful with the fiber in the early stages. Follow the normal fiber recommendations, 20 to 25 grams a day for women, 30 to 35 grams a day for men. A small amount above that, so 10 to 15% above that, won't be much of an issue. 10 to 15% below that probably won't be much of an issue. But if you're running double that or 10% of that, then you may run into health concerns, GI concerns. So follow those general recommendations. Now, with the pros, the cons, the background information, what grade did the vegan diet get? First one to get an A? Maybe? Nope. Another one that gets a B. A nice, solid B. And as Marshawn Lynch said, it doesn't get much better than solid. So the pros here that helped the vegan diet earn a B, for the most part, emphasizes healthy foods, fruits, vegetables. There are certain iterations or certain versions of the vegetarian diet that are more complete than others. And that high degree of adaptability is something that I like to see in a diet, like how inclusive or exclusive is the diet. I like a diet that's far more inclusive to give the people that are following the diet a lot more options of what they can eat. On average, when someone starts a vegan diet, what do we see? An increase in consumption of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, healthy seeds and nuts, fats, things like that. That's good. Can be viable. Weight loss diet for some. Some people say, when I started emphasizing those foods, my calorie intake went down and I lost weight. That's great. And then there's the ethical arguments as well. So the ethical arguments and the religious arguments, those are ones that can't really be refuted. But those are going to be some solid pros of the vegan diet as well. Now the cons, can't just cut out animal products and expect health to improve. When the World Health Organization put out their tips or their information about processed meat, everyone lost their mind and went vegan. The devil is still going to be in the dosage. Overconsumption of processed red meats is almost certainly not good for your health. However, reasonable consumption will not be deleterious to your health in the long term. And we see that when we compare healthy omnivorous diets to healthy vegetarian or healthy plant-based diets. Lifespan is about the same between the two groups. So you are still required to eat a healthful diet. The healthy user bias, we talked about that. A lot of the research that you'll see quoted, and this was in Game Changers like crazy. They quoted a lot of this data that just compared, hey, here's an average American that eats Auntie Anne's pretzels for breakfast and then skips lunch and has McDonald's and pizza for dinner. And look, they didn't live as long as this guy who exercises every day, doesn't smoke, and is a vegetarian. Well, of course. So that healthy user bias is something that you do want to be aware of, especially when people are quoting the vegan and vegetarian literature. The research is inconclusive, still in its infancy, but it looks pretty comparable to the other diets. Is that when you equate for everything else, when you control all other important health-related variables, the differences kind of wash themselves out. So, final point, negligible differences. Omnivorous diet should still be plant-based. The majority of what you're going to eat is mostly plants still. You're just throwing in some animal product as well to get complete proteins. So no real difference when you hold all other factors constant. I do have my references here at the end. Again, as always, if you guys want to get a copy of my references, I have no problem sending those to you. You can DM me on Instagram at The Squat Father, and I will send those over to you for your reading pleasure. Now, as always, make sure that you like, you comment, and you subscribe on this video. All the growth that we get on YouTube really helps us put out more quality content. If you support what we are doing here on this channel, go and subscribe to the Gifted Performance website. That's giftedperformance.com/sign up. $30 a month, you get access to 15 training programs, macronutrient programming, a place to log your macros, log your training, track your PRs, all of that. I'm getting DMs from people every day about hitting huge PRs on the training programs over there, which is awesome to hear. If you want a more personalized approach, we do have one-on-one coaching. Make sure you check out the coaches page, the Meet the Coaches page. And if you're interested, you can log into your account, click on custom training, and apply to work with one of our great coaches. We've got templates, we've got shirts, we've got coffee mugs, we've got all sorts of cool stuff on the storefront. So go and support us there. That's giftedperformance.com/store. Hit us up on Instagram. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all that stuff. We are at Gifted Performance, wherever you want. That's going to wrap up the diet series. I am very, very thankful to have everyone that watched, that commented, that reached out to me and said, hey, this series has been great. I'm always thankful for that support. We're looking forward to putting out more good series for you guys. We got a couple more in the works. We've got a series on supplements. Our coach Paul is going to talk all about super supplementation, design of things like that. We've got Thomas Neal going to talk about concurrent training. So stay tuned, subscribe, hit the notification bell, because we've got a lot more stuff coming your way. And you know the deal. As always, stay gifted.